Hey, I'm Derek, it's me, Derek, and welcome to Stop Skeletons and Fighting. We have been through several waves of retro revivals at this point, enough to feel skeptical when a new one nunchucks its way onto the scene. But yo, Shredder's Revenge is amazing. They did it. They actually did it. It is classic arcade Turtles action, but for the modern generation. Not that there haven't been great modern brawlers, there has in fact been plenty. Being able to give some foot soldiers the good old talk to 'em, Donatello 'em juggle combo special just warms my heart. It hits different since it's the Turtles, a franchise that nearly birthed this entire genre before being plagued by shoddy, blinking you'll miss them, digital-only arcade ports and reimaginings. And they're not the only Konami arcade bangers forced into digital delisted obscurity. Some weren't even that lucky. Not even a pachinko machine for Sunset Riders, Konami? Really? He says bury me with my money, it's a gambling machine, what the fuck? That's right, welcome to another episode of Delisted, the show that spotlights digital games pulled from digital stores or abandoned by the march of time. But sometimes, not for long, the games we'll be looking at in this episode are probably gonna keep rodeo dancing in and out of availability and onto new platforms, at least temporarily, as is the case with TMNT's upcoming Cowabunga collection. And while some wrongs are being righted, it is only a band-aid on an issue that's existed for over a decade. One that should have never been an issue in the first place. This is Delisted, Konami's classic arcade brawlers. But first. Hey, I'm in the kitchen now. Since December, I've started taking my health a little more serious. I've been exercising more, having some supplements. But did you know that all powdered supplements taste awful? Even if they say they're flavorless, don't believe them. It's all a disgusting lie, except for Athletic Greens. Uncle Derek's gonna tell you something that nobody else is gonna tell you. Athletic Greens, yo, the taste. I'm not saying like put it in your morning coffee or anything like that, but Athletic Greens has this great medicine-y green tea taste that is leagues better than anything else I have tried. It's part of my daily routine, not just because it's chock full of vitamins and minerals, but because, man, it's easy to mix. You get yourself a cool jar, fill it with some water, one scoop, shake her up, and you're good to go. And you're like me, you drink it in your morning shower. Wow, this sure is supporting my energy levels for the rest of the day. Click the link in the description below to get 1 year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 travel packs for free with your first purchase. Thanks to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this part of the video. I hit the microphone. On to the video. As an American man in his late 30s, let me tell you, I was part of that laser precision targeted demographic for Turtle Mania. I genuinely don't remember a world before Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was all over my childhood from the moment I gained sentience. And Konami's TMNT Arcade machine was released at the exact right time for maximum multimedia franchise synergy. It was fall of 1989. The television show had become a huge hit. Toys were flying off the shelves, and struggling actors were crammed into 70-pound death suits for movies, tours, and albums. For real, any theater showing the Turtles movie that didn't also have the Turtles arcade machine in the lobby was just pissing money away. In that brief period before Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat, this was the pinnacle of the arcade. And let's be real, guys in rubber suits are great. That first TMNT movie actually holds up pretty well, but the arcade game hit different. I mean, forget the NES game. Please forget it. This was like reaching into the TV and actually playing the cartoon. The graphics and animations were amazing. The Turtles talked.
Who put the light down?
They ate pizza for health. And 4 kids could play at once. This was the best thing ever for my 7-year-old brain. It's also why Donatello was my favorite. Dude's got the reach. Can't deny the reach. Oh wait, no, was that the Nintendo game? I forget. It was so huge that Konami had to just abandon that first NES game completely. From that point on, Turtles games are basically just all brawlers. And of course it was a must-have game with more levels and lots of tweaks from the arcade original. It could never match the hopped up on too much Coca-Cola 4-player action at Tyler Stark's Chuck E. Cheese birthday party. It's a different vibe from hoarding your extra lives by jump kicking Shredder and Krang a combined 396 times as recommended by Nintendo Power. As a kid, I absolutely did that because Nintendo Power said to. But even in world record speedruns, this is still the optimal strategy, so I guess the pros at Nintendo Power knew what they were talking about. The love for the original Turtles arcade game never really went away. It's probably the only reason people my age bothered to buy 2004's Battle Nexus. Sure, it was a new generation of Turtles, but I didn't care about that. The arcade game was a hidden unlockable. A terrible, terrible unlockable, turns out. All the music is gone. Every single level has the same, just generic song. All voice clips were removed, and on top of that, you need to play all the way to the 9th chapter to unlock it, which is the bulk of the game. I ain't doing that. But this is where the market for classic games was at the time. There was the occasional compilation, but if you look at games like Animal Crossing, MGS3, Subsistence, Mortal Kombat Deception, Doom 3, classic games were novelties, bonuses to add an extra bullet point at the back, or entice you into a special edition, and nothing more. But jump ahead to March 2007. The toothpaste was out of the tube. Virtual Console and Xbox Live Arcade were bringing digital, retro re-releases to the masses. For just a few bucks, your modern system could download and play classic games. Not only that, Turtle Mania was gearing up again. TMNT was returning to theaters for a new generation, along with a grip of tie-in video games. The stars were aligned for TMNT Arcade to finally debut in the living room via Xbox Live. That's right, 2 decades later, TMNT Arcade was again part of a multi-pronged attack for the next major wave of Turtles. And for us, geriatric millennials, we were again the perfect age. Hey, I'm old, let's be old! This is the last take I'm doing for this bit because my knees hurt. Officially called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1989 Classic Arcade, it was ported by Digital Eclipse and published by Ubisoft, who had only just recently taken the licensing reins from Konami. Though Konami's logo still shows up at the start. I mean, it was their game originally, so I'm sure they got a slice of the revenue. And it was a big hit, and a minor win in the console war, as it was a 360 exclusive. It never went to PSN, and even the NES port never came to Virtual Console. But if I'm gonna jump kick Shredder 400 times, I'm gonna at least do it with unlimited continues and 3 buddies on the couch. Though it was a bit of a rude awakening. Nostalgia will do that to you. Because while this version is basically arcade perfect, it was also basically arcade perfect. It is unfortunately shallow, brief, and repetitive, especially when you don't have to take breaks to run and beg mom for more quarters. But this was 2007. It was the age of the wireless controller, meaning couch co-op was easier than ever. And it was the age of Xbox Live, meaning online was easier than ever. I mean, with some buddies and some fresh pizza, TMNT Arcade was still a half-hour power you could not deny. Though the presentation left a lot to be desired. This new style turtle border is just so ugly. It's like this constant reminder that we just can't have nice things without contractual corporate obligation. And there's no way to put in multiple quarters to give you more lives. Yes, you have unlimited continues, but every time you die you have to press continue and reselect your Donatello. Gameplay-wise, it's great and just how you remember it, but presentation-wise, the whole thing screams, we don't know how to remake these old games yet! There weren't no game rooms, so I'm trying to say. Still, it moved almost 1 million downloads at 400 points or $5 a pop. That ain't turtle power, that's turtle profits. The year it was delisted, 2011, it still moved nearly 100,000 downloads. The weak presentation and lack of any special features didn't seem to keep it from doing numbers, because what we lost was just the convenience, the easy access to a quick hit of nostalgia. The '89 Turtles arcade game is such a landmark and clearly beloved game, it is criminal that it has not been widely available for over a decade. And yeah, I know it's on MAME. It's probably been on MAME for as long as MAME has existed, but I mean, I want to get on and play MAME. Then I gotta get 3 of my friends to get on MAME at the same time. Like, emulation is great, it is not always the most convenient. And while this is being re-released on the Cowabunga collection, I am still annoyed that artificial scarcity means that me and my buddies will have to buy this game again. For over 10 years, quick, easy online Turtles action hasn't existed, and that is a travesty. But I guess there were other options? Like, did you know that there is this weird DS game called Arcade Attack? Yeah, a 2009 in-name only reimagining of the arcade game. I guess it attempts to be a slower-paced, deeper action game, like a classic brawler but with the depth of a fighting game. It's a neat idea on paper, but not so much in practice, which is probably why I completely missed this. And then there's the remake by Raw Thrills, exclusive to arcades. I've seen this machine out in the wild, and while it was a massive and gorgeous cabinet, it was a whole $1 for 1 credit, and that was cutting into my beer money. though seeing it did bring a smile to my face. I'm sure it's made its mark on many Dave & Buster's birthday parties. You can have one of your own for $10,000. Or if that's out of your price range, Arcade 1-Up has a smaller reproduction of the classic machine for $400. So yes, there are options out there, but mainly for the enthusiasts with lots of disposable income and room in their homes. I am just looking forward to the Cowabunga collection, bringing it back to the couch. But of course, Turtles Arcade had a sequel that Konami turned out in just a year and a half, spring 1991. In fact, for how iconic the first Turtles Arcade was, Turtles in Time replaced most of the machines in my area growing up, so it's probably the one I've played the most. And really, the original Turtles Arcade may have been the first, but Turtles in Time is probably the better game, depending on how you felt about those hoverboard levels. But it was another gigantic arcade smash hit for Konami. Of course, there was also the amazing Super Nintendo port, which had lots of new content and rebalances. Sega got its own version with the Hyperstone Heist. By this point, home consoles were catching up to the arcades, meaning that the nostalgia for Turtles in Time might be stronger than the original. It also made another terrible appearance as an unlockable in 2005's Mutant Nightmare. It was the only new way to get Turtles in Time legitimately in its day, but it again had different music, different voice work.
Hey, Crank! Bring that statue back, you bloated beanbag!
And apparently frame rate issues. At least it was unlocked after only beating episode 1. There must have been feedback from people who only bought the previous Turtles game for the arcade. But by 2009, TMNT was hotter than ever. The new movie was a theatrical hit, the licensed games based on the movie were successful, and the arcade original was selling like hotcakes on XBLA. TMNT was now a multi-generational phenom. The pipeline of brand new Turtles games was continuing, so naturally, another arcade perfect port was the knowest brainer of all time, right? No. Oh, it was so simple. We were so close. But instead, the world was blessed with Turtles in Time reshelled. Yeah, instead of just a simple port, Turtles in Time joined the crowded club of decent to forgettable 7th generation remakes. For every Bionic Commando Rearmed and Splatterhouse, there was a Rocket Knight, Burger Time World Tour, Blaster Master Overdrive, and A Boy and His Blob. And Turtles in Time Reshelled was no different. Though, on the surface, they really went for it. And I get from Ubisoft's point of view why this was a solid move. The Turtles IP was theirs now. Why release a game where they'd have to split another check with Konami? Or maybe Konami didn't want to split the check. I mean, they were re-releasing a lot of their games at the time too, but strangely, very few of their Turtles games. But alright, Turtles in Time Reshelled, what do we got? Pixel-based graphics are out, we got full 3D characters here, which isn't my personal favorite, but we were coming off of the CGI movie, so I can't exactly tell it to get off my lawn. The game runs and feels fine. There's original music too, that's fine. They got the 2003 voice cast in to record lines, which...
Cowabunga!
Of course, you gotta do that. I don't love it, but I'm letting that cloud hang. I mean, it's okay that this game wasn't made just for the olds. But I do take exception to ignoring changes made in the Super Nintendo version, like keeping the 2 hoverboard levels as full levels instead of just short bonus stages. Hearing this 100 times
My toes!
is just as annoying as ever. But Reshelled makes some welcome changes to the combat, modernizing things a little bit. The inclusion of a double jump is awesome, specials have a dedicated button now. Some people really hated these changes, but overall, I found the combat to be pretty well balanced and far less frustrating than in '89 Arcade. It's still a pretty bland and repetitive ordeal, but I got through most of the game without dying after picking up on the nuances in the combat. A few of the bosses were super cheap, but it was never quarter-munching cheap. You know what I'm saying? There was an attempt to balance this game for the home and not the arcade. Reshelled also had 4 difficulty levels, a survival mode, leaderboards, online and couch co-op. It's a nice package, but despite all this, Reshelled is a misfire, like a conceptual misfire. The consensus was, if you're gonna give us a game that is just as repetitive, short, and with ultimately little extra replay, then just give us the original. And I agree. Not that the original Turtles in Time was bland, but neither version of this game lasts much longer than a large pizza from Charles Entertainment Cheese. Still, Reshelled was a modest success despite reviewing poorly. It was the best-selling game on PSN the first month and moved 444,000 downloads on XBLA before being delisted in June 2011, not even after 2 years. Reshelled is a bit of a tragedy all around, as this game has never been available since and will not be included on the Cowabunga collection, at least not as of the making of this video. and I think it's really unlikely that it ever will. Even though I was mild on this game, it's sad that Reshelled is seemingly gone forever. If only for the sake of preservation. It just feels wrong for something tied to such an iconic Ninja Turtles game to just be gone. But the Konami arcade train would not stop in the 90s. They really kicked the door down with 4-player machines, but with the X-Men arcade game, they took it further.
They are X-Men.
6 players, 2 screens for an ultra widescreen experience. I mean, in 1992, you walk into an arcade and you are not gonna miss this gigantic, beautiful machine. Not to mention, absolutely, Derek does a chef's kiss graphics and animations, so many enemies on screen at once, and the satisfying feeling of clearing the screen with an awesome, devastating special move, and great voice work all around.
X-Men, welcome to die.
Man, the early days of MagFest, I would absolutely wreck my voice doing the Colossus yell for an entire weekend. But it was worth it, because the fun I've had playing X-Men Arcade with drunken strangers at MagFest, oh man, I couldn't tell you. It is still a classic, but back in the day, Konami was again pushing the boundaries of the arcade and striking while the iron was hot, riding on the hype of the 1992 Saturday morning cartoon with the most iconic theme song ever. Hold on, Producer Grace, were you too young to know that theme song? Did you watch that show growing up? You don't know the the show was on Netflix for a hot minute, and it was not good, but man, back when I was a kid, I couldn't get enough of it. It was another massive arcade hit for Konami. Growing up, man, multiple machines even in Anchorage, Alaska at the time. Yo, what up, Merlin's Arcade that's a Planet Fitness now? You keep shining. This time from Backbone Entertainment and published by Konami. At this point, it had been established how to handle classic re-releases like this, and Backbone/Digital Eclipse had basically written the book on it since they released the bare-bones TMNT Arcade in 2007. Or maybe they were finally able to convince Konami or whoever to allow them to put extra stuff in, who knows. With X-Men Arcade, they came correct. The presentation is super slick, I love the new menus and the borders, though what's up with this DeviantArt level title screen? Storm looks bored, Wolverine has spiders on his arms, and Cyclops is just full-on disassociating. There's tons of video options like smoothing or turning the wallpaper off, even zooming in so you can pretend you're playing the single screen 4-player only arcade machine. It looks awful, but I kinda love it. You can even switch between the North American and Japanese ROMs. Even though the differences are minimal, commitment to being as comprehensive as possible is always appreciated in projects like this. Naturally, it's got full 6-player action with couch co-op and online, but in a point for Sony, the 6-player local co-op is exclusive to the PSN version since I guess only 4 controllers can be synced to an Xbox 360, including remotes. However, problems again arrive in the audio department. While Turtles in Time Reshelled had a brand new soundtrack, X-Men thankfully has all the original classic Konami arcade bangers. And yes, I'm including that song that just says X-Men, X-Men over and over again. However, the classic VO was not so lucky. For whatever reason, they couldn't use it.
Pyro will turn you to toast.
The solution? Just re-record all of it.
Pyro will turn you to toast.
Which on paper sounds like such a bad idea, but the re-recorded VO is so good.
Nothing moves the blob. Nothing moves the blob.
The actors tried their best to nail the exact delivery, and the engineers tried their best to match the processing of the original recordings. So, almost the same hammy line readings with almost the same overly reverbed and compressed sound.
You must rescue the professor. You must rescue the professor.
They even kept the classic bad translations.
X-Men, come dead. Dead. Ah, kill you.
It's so good, I didn't even notice until I sat down and compared the footage. I moonlight as a bit of an audio geek, so this was just really fascinating to me. And I will always appreciate sanding the undersides of the drawers, so to speak, when it comes to preservation.
Go and save the city.
Go and save the city.
While this game reviewed about the same as the 2007 Turtles port, judging by Major Nelson's Xbox Live charts, it wasn't quite raking in the same amount of cash. The nostalgia probably just wasn't as strong with X-Men. Also, it being $10 couldn't have helped much. $5 is about the most you can reasonably charge for a game like this. But that didn't stop it from getting an iOS and Android port in 2011, if you can believe it. This port was instead done by .mu, who also published Shredder's Revenge, so there's another Turtles connection. They're also making a Metal Slug Tactics game that I'm a little excited about. Yeah, I am always down for my girl Theo. What are we talking about again? X-Men, right. Anyway, the home console version of X-Men was delisted at the end of 2013, along with a bunch of other X-Men and Marvel games. The iOS and Android game met the same fate at the end of 2014. While you can still encounter the original game at game conventions, or if you have enough space in your home with the 1UP Arcade version, it's a bummer that the Backbone Entertainment version, with its extra features, impressive new voice performances, and 6-player online, is lost forever. And I mean that very literally. If X-Men Arcade ever comes back, it will likely not have the re-recorded voice work,
Kill you!
or the DeviantArt menu graphics. And this is a net loss for our culture, I think we can all agree. Our final game for Delisted was the last game re-released, but originally released alongside Turtles in Time. Konami knew how to pick them. TMNT, X-Men, and of course, The Simpsons were all given the arcade beat-em-up treatment just as they were all hitting mega hit status. And really, every kid my age had some Ninja Turtles toys and some Bart Simpson swag. I was doing the Bartman with the best of them. This is what you did in the early 90s, don't judge me. Anyway, America had just started simping for The Simpsons, and Konami was there to deliver arcade action to the masses. And it's still one hell of an arcade beat 'em up. In my experience, Lisa is the best. She's the Donatello of The Simpsons, and no, I will not be taking any further questions. But thanks to tried and true gameplay, more phenomenal pixel art that matched the style of the show very well, Simpsons Arcade had the distinction of being the only good Simpsons game for a really long time. However, it would spend the 90s in the arcade and never make its way to home consoles. Simpsons was, I think, in a similar situation as X-Men, where the console space was contractually locked down by whatever the hell Activision and Acclaim were doing at the time. Or so I thought. Simpsons Arcade was ported, and quite a bit, but just in the weirdest places, like Commodore 64 and DOS. Oh man, we talk a lot about GBA ports around here, but DOS ports? That's a whole nother beast. But I've been around the DOS box. I'll tell you what really threw me. EA's 2009 Java flip phone remake. I had no idea this ever existed. Man, how did TMNT and Simpsons both get super weird remakes I never heard of? I hadn't planned on covering this game, and even though it's not a Konami game, it's another delisted game and it's close enough. Let's boot up the old Cumulator and check out the Java version. Developed by Iron Monkey, it is shockingly good. I did not expect this, especially given that it's a remake in name only like that weird TMNT DS game. In EA's mobile Simpsons Arcade remake, you can only play as Homer, but instead of a kidnapped Maggie, there is a donut carrying a top secret USB that Homer mistakes as a donut worth killing for. Wow, late era Homer is ready for some deep fried murder. Controls are simple, requiring only the 5 button for attack and the 2, 4, 6, 8 keys as the D-pad. There's nuance too. Holding down attack makes Homer charge. You can also pick up and swing around grunt enemies. There's also family power-ups sprinkled around levels with tons of enemies. I wish there was a bigger enemy variety, but it was cool seeing characters like Chief Wiggum or Mayor Quimby who aren't in the Konami game. There are some familiar stages, but levels are redone, and I also really enjoyed the music. Honestly, add this to the short list of good Simpsons games. One big knock against it though, the lack of sound effects, but those were added into the game's HD Touch version on iOS. Yeah, I got an iPhone port too! This looks like a better version all around. Beyond improved graphics and sound, Homer gets a jump ability and new attacks to go with it. There's also added minigames in this version, but I say looks like a better version because I wasn't able to find myself an iPhone with this still installed in time for this video. Yeah, iOS emulation, I'm sad to say, still has a ways to go. I guess if you were in the know at the time, this mobile version would have held you down until the Konami arcade game finally came to North American consoles via XBLA and PSN in February 2012. This is another Backbone Entertainment joint, and once again they come correct with the extras. You get your choice of either the North American or Japanese ROM, which actually has a few notable differences like atomic bombs, more health pickups, and the ability to boost your health past 100. Also, these hat guys' hats don't boomerang. It's actually a more balanced version of the game that I think I'd appreciate a lot more in the arcade. I actually managed to beat the Japanese version on just 10 quarters, a feat I have never come close to doing in an arcade. Beating the game with each family member unlocks a new set of extras, including rare flyers and posters, sound and music tracks, and dude, the music in this game is truly unlike anything else. That was just the intro to the song. And then check out this utter madness. Like, music made for arcade games hits different, but the Simpsons Arcade goes so hard. Like, this soundtrack is its own special kind of masterpiece. And being able to so easily appreciate the soundtrack on this port was amazing. So, another great port of another great game with a lot of great extras. But we saved not the best for last, but the last for last, if that makes any sense. Simpsons was on the market just shy of 2 full years between 2012 and 2013, and really by 2012, you could say the Bartman was up. Even though it was packed with the most extras of the bunch, $10 was again asking a bit too much, and better brawlers like Scott Pilgrim and even Castle Crashers proved brawlers didn't need to solely exist as shallow quarter munchers. Simpsons Arcade was the best-selling new release in its first week, but he immediately fell off the charts, not having the shelf life of the Turtles. Like all the games we discussed in this video, the 1UP arcade machines are there if you have the space and the extra cash, but none of those feature the same extras and bonus content or charming re-recorded audio, nor do they have the convenience of simple and cheap online play. I mean, yes, those machines do have online, but we're talking about the number of people that have arcade 1UP machines, and everyone with an XBLA, PSN, and Steam account. Like I mentioned earlier, the 7th generation of consoles is when the cordless controller and online gaming became standard, and it should have been the era where this genre made a huge comeback. And I guess it still did, but for the classics that paved the way, it was not to last. Arcade 1UP and the Cowabunga collection, which we'll have online, are filling holes, fixing mistakes that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And what about the other Konami classics that weren't re-released? Where is Justice for Sunset Riders? Oh, wait a sec, looks like it was released for the Switch and PS4 in 2020? How am I only finding out about this now? Bury me with my money. If there are any other gone but not forgotten digital games you'd like to see on an episode of Delisted, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Huge shout out to our old college buddy Shelby. Thank you for lending us your old Xbox 360 with all the old games on it. And a thanks to Tyler from My Retro Life, who lent us some amazing home video footage of his family visiting an arcade in the 90s. This footage is an absolute delight and a great little time capsule of that era. Link in the description below if you want to watch the entire video. It's wonderful. Also, thank you to all our Patreon supporters, all these awesome people here. Every single one of these names is possible for making this show possible. We have been Patreon strong for 7 years now. Thank you so much for all of that. That's ridiculous. We got 70 more years. Why stop here? Stop Skeletons and Fighting's on Patreon. You want to have your name right here, see videos early, vote on videos early, be a part of our podcast, chat along with us during the live recording of our podcast, all kinds of extra stuff. Get our bonus weekly progress reports, our State of the Skeletons. Every week we talk about what we've been working on, what new stuff is coming. Well, you want to know what's happening with Stop Skeletons? Get on the Patreon. Hey, but if you can't do that, just tell a friend, watch the friend, let everyone know what's the dumbest and funnest YouTube channel out there. Let them know about Uncle Derek, Producer Grace, Launchpad the Hot Dog Gamer taking a sleep over here. Let them know about Stop Skeletons Funny. Tell them about the channel. I'll see you all again real soon. Stay powerful.